So the next one that we're doing is continuing with distributional fullness, which is essentially gathering. And we're going to talk about gathering into a dart. So in this particular case, we're going to be talking about gathering into a bus dart. So what we'll be doing is we'll be taking our basic bodice sloper with the waist dart, closing the waist dart, creating a style line here, a curved style line, which is what this is in your sketchbook here, in your notebook, a curved style line that we're going to create gathers into. So the first thing I want to do is we're going to trace off our sloper, and then we're going to, you don't need to close out the dart yet because we'll do that. We want to create, what is that style line going to be? What are our slash lines going to be that we're going to create this excess from? So it's creating flare from the top part of the bodice, which we're then going to be gathering back into that closed waist. So in order to do this, I'm going to show you, we're going to draft it in the craft paper. So I'm going to trace it off. Establish my grain line, trace off my neck. Basically, we're just copying everything exactly as is for now, as it exists on the slope. Waist darts. And the bust point, right? So let's draw in those dart legs as they exist in the original. Make sure we have our bust point down. That's this one. Dart leg 1, closest to the center front. Dart leg 2, closer to the side seam. Square and true. Center front neck. Shoulder, armhole. Square and true, just like our romances, right? Always be square and true. Okay, next, what we want to do is we want to define where we want that style line to end. So how far into the bust do we want this to go? Based on the design line, it's pretty far in, so let's just say that that fullness is going to come from, we want to back off the shoulder line, remember? But we want to say that it's going to come about an inch into the bust line, and we want it to be a half inch away from the shoulder. So we want to just say that the first style line is there, right? We're never going into the true apex, always backing out half inch away. And we're going to have this is actually going to come from below the bust line area. It's going to be below the dart. We want this fullness underneath the dart. And then you're going to draft how far down do I want this style line to come. So this is a design decision. You know, how far up do we want it to be? How in do we want it to be? You're actually designing the garment. Now we're going to create what that style line is going to look like. So we want it to be kind of a natural curve, slightly above, and then slightly below. So it's a design line. And you want this design line to be as if the dart were closed, right? So this line and that line has to be the same. And of course, we're going to have to be at least a half inch away. How far away you want that bust line to come. Now you just create, all we need are, remember, some slash lines. We need them to be, it's got to be at least a half inch away from there, but it's just to create fullness. So there and there, and I want a little bit of fullness flare coming from the side seam area, so there. So this is what we're going to pivot out to create that extra flare, this extra fullness. And this is my center front. True north. Now I'm going to cut it out. Hem, waist, side seam, shoulder, neckline, armhole, waist dart, because that's getting closed. We don't need that anymore. Now we're basically going to create our design area in through here by slashing and spreading our modified design bodice and transferring it to the point paper. So I'm going to establish my grain line. Hook my bodice to the center front to the grain line. This is going to be my style line, so I want all of these. They're going to be my style lines. So the flare is coming from, is going to be, the excess gathering is going to be from the waist. So what they're hinging to is the shoulder line in this particular case. So I want to make sure here's my first panel. Remember, you're backing off about 1/8 of an inch. And this is going to be a seam, so I'm going to actually slash on this line. This will be my seam line, my bottom seam, remember, in this part of the sketch. And that's going to connect. I'm going to close out the waist dart. And then on these, it just depends on how much flare I want to have. Don't slash all the way to the shoulder seam. And then you want to just add your flare. You're going to slightly pivot. And secure. So I'm adding about 3/4 of an inch of fullness between each of the slash areas with a reduced amount of fullness as we get into the side seam area because you want to maintain the stability of your armhole. Make sure that you secure your panels. Obviously, this is going to need to be blended. Secure your side seam, secure your armhole, secure your shoulder seam. That's going to need to be stabilized. So your shoulder seam will have a slight curve to it. You don't want to just straighten that out. So, but it does need to be blended. So I'm going to blend. And then I want to make sure I've secured these sections here, my distributional fullness section. I'm going to blend this back. To that. Now remember, we don't want it to go all the way to the true apex. And then this seam, we want it to be shaped. So what you need here is the control notch. So we want to add that. It's at least 5/8 of an inch from the side seam. Can be more, can be less. I'm going to make this one as design detail 3/4 of an inch. And then that means what I do here on this panel also needs to be 3/4 of an inch. Make sure your armhole is nice and blended. Then you'll go back and add your seam allowance. 1/4 inch at the neckline, 1/2 inch at the shoulder, 1/2 inch at the armhole, 1/2 inch at the side seam, 1/2 inch at your dart intake side seam. Don't forget to maintain your center front grain. If this is going to be cut on the fold, center front on fold. Talk about the dart punch point. Don't forget, we want to back off a 1/2 of an inch for your dart punch. If this is going to be gathered back in here for a dart. And that seam allowance should be curved. So you're going to follow that. Use the dashed line method to follow that curve. The clear ruler is your best friend. Clear graph ruler. But you have to make sure that it's maintained. It will degrade over time. The plastic is plastic. It's not glass. So it will need to be replaced with intense use. And then a 1/2 inch here. Your regular notches for your side seam. And that is distributional fullness 603, adding fullness into the bust dart.